Hello ProStart culinarians, this is Chef Hawks, and we are here for chapter number 11, Food Service Equipment. We have so much equipment in our kitchen, it's pretty amazing how many different tasks we can do and have assistance from it in the modern age now, with so many different gadgets and tools that we can use. But we have to know how to use them, we have to know how to clean them, and we have to know how to use them and operate them safely, so that way they're useful to us and they do save us time and money, but they keep us safe at the same time. So let's start working our way through, just in the same way that you're working your way through in the kitchen, actually physically learning how to use these. So we start at the back of our kitchen, right in our receiving area. So if you're in a large kitchen, in a hotel, in a private club, they should have some kind of a receiving area. Generally, it's near the back door of the kitchen, because that's where most deliveries are made. But this is where that first step in the flow of food occurs. This is where deliveries come in, and we have to check the quality and quantity of everything that comes through the door. On our receiving table area, this is where we would have a set of scales, so that we can actually inspect the actual products. And we need to be able to check all of the items that are on that delivery. We need to make sure not only that everything came in, but the correct amount came in, and then the actual quality of it as well. So that area has to be well lit. It has to be an area where we can identify if there's any problems with that food. So the scales should be accurate, so they can confirm not only the items that are in, but the volume or the weights of those items, to make sure that we're not being ripped off, that we're getting exactly what we're paying for. We generally would have some kind of utility carts so that we can roll things from that area into our storage facilities.
Receiving and storage is a critical part of any food service operation. Prepare your storage areas for delivery. Have your order list available and cross-check it against the invoice. Don't rush. While the driver is still on the premises, make sure you check that you have everything you ordered, the right item, the right quantity, the right quality. Open your cases to check the quality of the product. Look at the product. Inspect it. You should spot check your temperatures of your hazardous foods. If anything is missing or unsatisfactory, refuse at the time of delivery and make sure your invoice is corrected. Make sure both the receiver and the delivery person initial any returns or credits. When you make a return, make sure you let your supervisor know so that they can assure that the product gets replaced. Date your cases and make sure you're rotating your product in all your storage areas. Remember the rule, FIFO, first in, first out. Avoid cross-contamination in your storage areas. Keep your raw foods on the lower shelves, your prepared foods above. Keep like things alike. Keep it all organized. A well-organized storage area creates an efficient workspace.
We then move on to our storing areas, and so with dry goods, we're going to store those dry goods at least 6 inches off the ground. So you can see right here in the photograph, these shelves are well above 6 inches off the ground, so that way it makes it very difficult for pests and rodents to be able to get to them. Now with things like these cans, they're not going to be able to get into those anyway. But the fact is that if you have some sacks of flour or potatoes or anything else like that, then those are very susceptible to pests being able to get in. And so we have to make sure we make it as difficult as possible. For perishable goods, we have our refrigerators and freezers where those are temperature controlled. Shelving that we always use is going to be stainless steel, so it's very strong and easy to clean. You see the NSF logo that we have here, so this is indicating that type of quality shelving that we're going to use, because that gives us the longevity and the strength and the ease of clean on those products. We're going to see that NSF logo a lot around our kitchen, though. With all of our kitchen equipment, it should have the NSF logo on it, indicating that these products are made with that strength and durability and ease of cleaning. So then when it comes to our refrigerators, so we have several different types of refrigerators and freezers available to us, including walk-in refrigerators and freezers.
The most important thing in the walk-in is the temperature. You want to make sure that the ambient temperature, the cold air that's blowing out of the condenser unit, is at least 35 to 38 degrees. That's going to ensure that the food inside here stays at 41 or below, which is extremely important, especially in the walk-in. Next, we want to make sure that any raw meats are stored down below. Right here we have raw chicken right where it needs to be. We have raw sausage, raw pork, raw steaks. So this is exactly where you want the raw product to be. Any cooked product or prepared product is away from the raw meats. Next, we have labeling. Everything that's been cooked or prepared in here needs to be labeled. So we have chili verde labeled for this was made yesterday. Chili verde made yesterday. Chili rojo made a couple days ago. This is perfect. Lastly, we got cleaning. We want to make sure that the floors, walls, and ceilings and any lights aren't accumulating any dust or mold. We want the condenser fans. The way these things work is they suck in and blow out of air, and so a lot of times they collect dust. We want to make sure that that's being wiped off regularly. You can tell these are great because we don't have any collecting dust. So the walk-in is really the heart of the restaurant because all the food that's prepared and made comes out of here. So if anything goes wrong here, it can affect the restaurant in a very negative way.
Then we also have what we call reach-in refrigerators and freezers, and this is where we literally will reach into those types of refrigerators. That's the smaller types of refrigerators. So you can get full size and half door size, where they actually you can have them below the counters in the kitchen, or you can have them full size where you can fit a full speed rack in. We'll discuss speed racks in a little while. So then we also have some that have windows, some that have doors on both sides, and wheels on as well. The ones we have in the kitchen all have wheels. Makes it easier to clean behind them. And then you also have things like portable refrigerators and freezers as well, depending upon the needs of that kitchen. So the temperatures, as we all know, should be for refrigerators between 32 and 41. We don't want any of our food freezing, but we don't want it getting above 41 degrees. Otherwise, we can end up in the temperature danger zone. With freezers, they should be 0 degrees or lower. But then we have the types of equipment that we use to process meats. So we have cutters and mixers. So let's look at some of these first. So we can cut meats and vegetables, mixing sauces and batters with some of the mixers. We can start on slow speeds and then build up the speed so we don't make a mess. We can scrape the bowl to actually make sure we get all of the product from them. Make sure that you never place any objects in a mixing bowl while it's running. This can be quite lethal. And also make sure that you use any kind of safety guards which come with that equipment and any PPE that you're supposed to use. Always make sure that you are properly trained on a piece of equipment before you use it. If you start in a job and they tell you to go ahead and use a machine, then make sure to let them know if you've never used it before. You're better off learning how to use it than you are trying to figure it out and injuring yourself or damaging the equipment. Now we can work our way through some of these pieces of equipment. So we have a countertop blender. We have some of these in our kitchen. They're great for pureeing, liquefying, and blending foods. They're fairly large in that we can fit a good volume in them, and they have a very fast propeller-like blade that goes around, which actually helps to churn the food around if there's enough liquid content in there to move it all through. So even the foods on the top of that liquid will be blended up through those blades. You have different types of speed settings that are on the base of the unit, and so it has a removable lid as well and an insert in the lid so you can actually add things. So if you're making a vinaigrette, then you can add the oil to it as you actually are continuing to spin it as well. We have a food chopper, and so this literally, as it says, chops vegetables, meats, and other foods. The actual blade itself is housed right behind this hump here, and it spins around as this bowl moves through. And you can drop foods into this space here as the bowl moves around and puts it through the blade. And then that can actually just chop it up into smaller and smaller pieces as you continue to let it go around, or you can just turn it off and let it stop just to get a rough chop on there. Sometimes these are also called a buffalo chopper. Then we move on to food processors. So a food processor is great for grinding, pureeing, blending, crushing, and kneading foods if you're doing doughs. The motor is separate from the bowl and the blades and the lid. The motor is actually housed in this base unit here, separate from this part here, the bowl with the blades and the lid. Then we have a horizontal cutter mixer, an HCM. So this cuts, mixes, and blends foods very quickly. This is more substantial in size and strength as well. With high-speed horizontal rotating blades that spin around, it can control the length of time that the blade runs through that actual product. So before you go to open the lid, make sure you count to 10. Why is that? Well, that blade is spinning very, very quickly, and it's churning the food that's in there as well. Otherwise, you may end up with a nasty, messy surprise spraying out at you. Then we have an immersion blender. So an immersion blender, or a stick blender as it's sometimes called, looks just like this. This is where the motor is up at the top here, and it has this rod here with the blade that spins at the very end. So the idea of this is that you can actually immerse it into a liquid, maybe a soup or a sauce, and you can turn it on. You don't actually have to remove the product from that pot to put into a blender and then pour it back out again. So you can actually do large quantities still in the pot, and then you can continue to cook it if you like right after that as well. Let me show you a good example. Now we have our mandolin. We use these in the kitchen to slice up different vegetables, especially things like potato chips, where you can actually do different types of designs. You can do waffle potato chips. You can do, or you can do just the straight, very thin cut, or you can do a thicker kettle chip kind of cut as well. Great thing with this is that you can make very, very exact slices, so that way you can control those sizes as well. So always make sure, with safety for this, to use that hand guard. We also have some gloves as well, some safety gloves that can help you to stop you slicing your fingers too. But the blades that are on this mandolin are incredibly sharp. So you have to make sure that you're very careful with it when you're using it, but also when you're cleaning it too. Very often that's when you end up cutting yourself, is when you're trying to clean the thing as well. The meat grinder. So this is a freestanding machine, or you can have them that are attachments for our mixer machine as well. They can attach onto those too. But in this case, this one here is a freestanding machine, and this has an auger that runs straight through here, and you'll actually have the whole pieces of meat right here. This is the plunger that will press it down into the auger, which will actually run it through the grinder to grind that the pieces of meat through there. Always make sure that you keep your hands far, far away from any of those blades. You don't want to have your fingers anywhere near this. Always cleaning that as well. Any of these blades that are through here that's going to extrude the chewed up meat, is very easy to have small little pieces left over afterwards. To avoid cross-contamination, make sure that you are fully able to take this machine apart and properly clean it before its next use as well. Slicers are incredibly useful, but very, very dangerous. So there are age restrictions on being able to use these out in the industry. And that's because there is a circular blade that rolls around right here that can slice straight through your fingers as well. Always make sure you use the guards on these.
Meat slicers can be very dangerous. Don't use one unless you've been trained and feel comfortable with its operation.
A little bit of fear is a good thing. I mean, I always tell people when they're working with any piece of equipment, a little bit of respect for the machinery and the equipment and the speed it moves is really important.
The blade guard must be in a secured position before using the slicer. Use the meat grip to keep your hands away from the blade. When operating the slicer, Always give it your full attention.
The important things are that you've got the proper guards in place and you're using the proper guides for the food so that as you're slicing, you never have the potential of getting too close to where the blade of the slicer is when it's operating.
Don't remove the meat from the machine until the cutting wheel comes to a complete stop. When you're not using the slicer, set the blade adjustment to 0. The most dangerous thing about a slicer is cleaning a slicer.
Doesn't matter if you're in a low end or in a high end. If you're using it and you're done using it, you're responsible for cleaning it.
Before cleaning, unplug the machine and set the blade adjustment to 0. Unplug your meat slicer and 0 your blade.
Just turning it off doesn't do enough because you could bump the switch while you were cleaning it.
Always wear Kevlar gloves when cleaning a meat slicer.
In the old days, they used to be made out of metal, but now they're Kevlar. They're actually quite a lot more comfortable.
Carefully wash the blade by wiping outward from the center of the blade. And always maintain a sharp blade on the slicer. It's just ensuring that people know how to use the equipment and that they're being smart about it. Unplug the meat slicer when it's not in use. Before plugging the slicer back into the outlet, make sure the switch is in the off position.
Mixers can save us so much time and energy compared to if we're having to mix things ourselves. So mixers come in various different sizes. We actually in our kitchen have KitchenAid machines just like this one that are used on the countertop. But then we also have one of these larger machines as well. They generally come in 5 quart, 20 quart, 60 quart and 80 quart sizes. So they can mix and process large amounts of food. And they also have different specialized attachments that can do all sorts of other jobs for us as well.
Hey guys, Chef Hawks here again. So another piece of equipment we have our KitchenAid food mixers. So these are small enough that we can make just one batch of cookies. They're big enough and powerful enough that we can make significantly more of them. So we've got several attachments that we generally use on this. So first of all, we have the bowl which slots in. I'll show you exactly how that happens. And then we have our whisk attachment. This is for beating up some cream, something very fine and thin like that. Whisk attachment. And then we have our beater paddle. So our beater paddle, that's it. We're going to do creaming products. So we've got things like butter and sugar that we're creaming together to make the base of some cookies or cakes, and then we'll beat those together. And then we have our dough hook. So this bunny spiral dough hook is all about making things like bread dough. This will actually emulate the same kind of working that happens when you knead things by hand, stretching and flying out on the gluten product that's in that dough to actually help to actually strengthen it and to make it into exactly what you want it to be. So let's take a look at exactly how we use all these attachments. Okay, so first off, the bowl. The bowl has this very handy handle that's on the side here. So now the important thing is this will always be on the outside. If you have this and you're trying to attach the bowl in the wrong way, you're trying to put it with the handle on the back, it won't connect. You must have it where the handle is ready for you to be able to use. So what we do is you hook it up onto these two little pins. There's one on either side, and this will actually hook into here. On the back, there's a little bubble that sticks out right here, and right back here, there's a little piece which presses into place. This is what locks you in, and it must be locked in to make sure this is safe. So we can place these two down here, and then just gently click that right into place. So then after this, we're able to use all of our different attachments. So if you take a look at this right here, there's actually a circle with a notch on there. Under here, there is actually the exact opposite of that. So this literally slots in. It goes up, and it goes a quarter turn, and then you let go, and it's locked into place. So again, you take this part here, and with that, where that notch is right here, we have this. Literally go up, we do a quarter turn, and it drops into place. And this is now secure enough that it will be able to operate on the machine. So then, we use exactly the same method, with exactly the same coupling. Take it a quarter turn, drop it into place. push it up, and then take it a quarter turn, and it comes right back out again. And the same with our dough hook. Placing that in, so it slots in, quarter turn, drops into place. So we now have our dough hook ready to go in here. It's all locked in place. Our bowl is locked carefully into place. Now, how do we operate this? So we actually draw this bowl up. There are some mixers that actually lift up at the top. This one right here just goes right down and right up. And when you actually get to here, you'll feel it. It'll click into place. You should never have to push this hard. If you're having to push it with excessive force, something's not working out right. If you try and pull it towards you, it won't go. You have to push it away and flick up until it clicks into place. Okay, so everything is all locked in place now. We have our dough hook, our bowl is all locked in and ready to go. So what's the biggest thing we have when we're working in culinary in general? It's all about controlling our environment, controlling the ingredients to get exactly the yield that we want to get. So right here we have our control unit. So this is where we can click it on. We have a very slow speed to get ourselves started. Perfect for if we're trying to work something like flour in. It's going to make a big mess everywhere where it just fluff out all over the place. But if we're looking to whip things up a little more, then we can go up. But as you can see, every level has a new speed. Never be tempted to try and place any spatulas or any other things into the bowl while that whisk is going. Always make sure you let it turn off, come to a full stop before you try and scrape the bowl down.
Moving on to steamers. So steamers are used to cook vegetables and grains, and the food comes into direct contact with the steam. This heats food very quickly as well. We have a few different types of steamers that we can use, as well as just using a pot of water on the stove that we can place a platform above to just use it in that type of way. Pieces of equipment that we can have a steamer just like the one pictured here, perfect for cooking things like vegetables and grains. You can have it on low or high steam pressure. This consists of stacking different pots. You have the lower pot with boiling water, and then the upper pot that has a perforated bottom, and it has holes in the bottom that allow that steam to circulate through. Cooks food very quickly with the hot water vapor right at 212, which is the point of boiling water. You then have convection steamers. These are where steam is generated in a boiler and piped to the cooking chamber. It's vented over the foods itself. The pressure does not build, but the pressure continually exhausts from the machine itself. But there's continuous movement of that pressure and the steam that's rolling through there. You can open the door with these machines without any danger, and you can cook large quantities of food in these products too. Now we're moving on to pressure steamers. So this is where you're cooking with pressure involved. This is where you can actually go greater than 212 degrees. You can have that steam boiling above the boiling point of water. So this can then cause dangers involved with there as well. So you have to make sure that you're very careful with these types of machines. The cooking time can be controlled by automatic timers, and they will vent steam automatically out of the top to maintain exactly where they need to be safe. We then also have steam-jacketed kettles. So this is actually where the steam isn't actually venting straight out of the machine. In this part right here, there is a jacket that's around this large kettle, and that is what will heat things up. This actually gives the ability to not burn foods on the bottom. It's great to use when you're making things like sauces and things to have the susceptibility to burn on the bottom. It's almost impossible to burn anything on the bottom of these types of machines. Let's take a look at a good example of one.
Today we are featuring the GROEN 20-gallon steam-jacketed floor kettle to prepare a delicious tomato marinara. Here's a unique method to prepare vegetables for the sauce in the steamer. First, we add to a 2-inch hotel pan finely ground onions, tomato paste, olive oil, garlic, and a dry herb blend, kosher salt, pepper, and mix well. Cover with a standard hotel pan lid and place in the hypersteam for hands-free cooking of the vegetable base for our pizza sauce. Now we can start gathering our ingredients, including the prepared vegetables to make our tomato sauce. In a kettle, combine peeled and diced tomatoes, red wine, sugar, ground red pepper, salt, pepper, oregano, and fresh basil. GROEN steam-jacketed kettles are more efficient and safer than traditional stock pots, with faster cook times and reduced energy cost. And GROEN steam-jacketed kettles come standard with a reinforced rim. While the tomato sauce is cooking, let's take a look at some other great features of the GROEN kettle. GROEN uses a 3/16 stainless steel for the interior line of all their floor kettles to protect them from the damage of high acidic foods like tomatoes, which can cause pitting, decreasing the lifespan of a kettle. The GROEN kettles come standard with watertight glass and pressure gauge to help protect your kettles. GROEN's trademark signature mirror-like finish stands alone in the industry.
Now we move on to our tilting frying pan, or a tilt skillet as it's sometimes called, or even a brat pan is sometimes the way it's called as well. So this is a great piece of equipment that's incredibly versatile. This can be used to grill, steam, braise, saute, and stew foods. And actually the way it works, this part here is actually the area where we're cooking in. It's just like a giant saucepan. And the actual heating unit is underneath, and the tilting unit is also underneath as well. There are different methods. The one that we have in our kitchen just has a lever that we pull forward to actually tilt the skillet, to tilt this whole top piece up. This one here, as you can see, has a handle that you wind to actually tilt it up to empty the liquids or the products out into whatever unit, whatever container you want to use. There are others which are fully mechanized. You just push a button and it tilts it up for you. So you can cook a lot of different types of food. This can be one of the most versatile cooking pieces of equipment in a kitchen. Let's take a look at a great example of one of the more modern pieces of these equipment.
Today we're preparing braised cabbage with apples and bacon in our 30-gallon Eclipse braising pan. We will start by adding cut bacon and rendering until crispy. This is a great example of the braising pan's fast and even cooking surface. The equipment can reach temperatures of 350 degrees in just 4 minutes for fast response and quicker cook times to keep pace with the high demands of the casual dining restaurant. Now we'll add the washed and cut red cabbage and quickly stir. The unique rounded corners makes it easy to move all the product around the braising pan. Now adding salt and pepper, you can see how evenly the cabbage is cooking. Some unique features are the torsion bar hinged cover that is fully adjustable to any working height, and the steam vent that gives you a way to peek in or add liquids to product without opening the lid. Now we add peeled apples, balsamic vinegar, and brown sugar. Recipes that are high in sugar will cause color in the pan. This is good for flavor development. The unique heat delivery system for either the gas or electric models, along with the 5/8-inch stainless steel clad plate, promotes even cooking and eliminates hot and cold spots. Smart features like the precision thermostat control housing that is highly water resistant and ergonomically designed for easy line of sight display. This incredible cooking equipment is designed to make large batch cooking controllable, effective, and easy to execute. The optional pan carrier assisted transfer of product using our distinctive pour lip. The center tilt design provides the shortest pour path in the industry with an available manual and electric tilt assist. This pan will be deglazed with chicken stock and balsamic to utilize the caramelization of the bacon and brown sugar for the sauce. The high-quality stainless steel cooking surface is the easiest to clean in the industry.
Moving on to broilers. So a broiler gives intense, direct heat, generally a radiant heat that we're using with broilers. So this cooks food very, very quickly. The heat source is above and, or it can be above and below, depending on the specific type of equipment that you're using. First of all, we're going to look at char broilers. So these can also sometimes be called grills. These would be used inside the kitchen, so this would either be gas or electricity. And these mimic the effects of using a charcoal grill. As the food drips onto the heat source, it creates flames and smoke that adds that type of grill flavor to the food. Now we have a countertop broiler. So this actually has a couple of different working components that you can see, from this solid top up on top here to the broiler that's right underneath. Let's take a look more closely at this piece of equipment.
What we want to do today is take a little of the mystery out of how the Steakhouse broiler works. We've had quite a few calls and emails from you, our customers, asking particular questions. So we'll just run through the process, and we'll try to take the mystery out of cooking on the Montague Steakhouse broiler. If you notice on the top here, we have a beautiful porterhouse steak just searing away on top of the sear plate. The purpose of this is, once the broiler is up to temperature, and I must tell you, it takes about 30 to 40 minutes to bring it up to temperature to get the 600 degrees Fahrenheit in the center of the sear plate. But the purpose of this is to get a beautiful caramelization on the protein, whether it be a beef product, a pork product, a chicken product, and even a seafood product. We want to get the protein seared to maintain the juices inside the meat so you don't get a lot of blood on the plate when somebody cuts into it. Let me turn this over for you so you can see the other side. You notice how we have a sizzle here. We can put steaks all the way across here. We can put portions of steak and chicken. We can do a lot of different things with it. While we're waiting for this to sear, I'd like to point out a few other features on the Montague Steakhouse broiler. Notice we have a beautiful red glow here. That's because with the Montague Rad-A-Glow broiler system, this is an infrared heat. There's two types of broilers. There's an under-fired broiler and an over-fired broiler. This is an infrared over-fired broiler, and it's going to give us perfect harmony of heat. So the outside of the steak is perfectly caramelized, and the inside is succulent and juicy the way your customers like it. A couple other things while we're talking about the sear plate I'd like to show you is, you notice we have a drip tray. This drip tray goes on and off very easily. It's designed that we can empty it during service time or at the end of the evening. It's very simple to clean. To put it back on, we just place it back on the broiler, and it sits there just like so. So any of the residual fats and oils from the proteins that are being exuded from the product, they go naturally to that area. At the end of the evening, we just take a real spatula, scrape this down, wipe it down with some soft cloth and oil, and we're ready to go for the next day. Look at that beautiful steak. Now let's talk about what we do when we actually put it in the infrared broiler. You notice that the drawer moves in and out very carefully, and you see a little spattering of the color there. It's doing exactly what it's supposed to do. I like to keep one side on wide open. Notice that the valves are straight up and down at 90 degrees for wide open. And then on the other side, we can turn it down slightly. What this allows us to do as professional cooks and chefs is one side is going to be for rare to medium. And on the other side, if we chose to do this, we can move this over here. We have about a 250 to 300 degree difference in temperature, and we can actually cook our medium or medium well to wells on this side, and the outside won't be quite as dark as it would be if we left it on the wide open burner. We can also adjust the shelf up and down. If we have a thinner cut of steak, we can cook closer to the burner itself. If we have a thicker cut of steak, we want to drop it down on low.
We then have our hotel broiler. This is basically a larger version, which is a freestanding version. This cooks large amounts of food very, very quickly. Then we move on to our rotisserie. This is where we're able to actually put foods. Quite often it's used for chickens, turkey, and poultry to actually place onto a spit, onto a long rod. And these rods actually go straight through the actual machine, and they turn over time. So this actually is a great method of cooking, especially meats like turkey and chicken that have a very low fat content, to actually help to self-baste them as they turn. It doesn't allow the juices just to completely drip off them. They'll actually, as it turns, it self-bastes some of the meat that does drip, it will drip down onto the next meat to the next meat, so it actually helps to go and baste all of those products as well. Now we move on to our Salamander. Salamander is a small radiant broiler. It creates a lot of heat directly from the top. This is very often attached to the back of a cooking range. This is used to brown, finish, and melt foods.
A salamander broiler is an essential part of any food service kitchen. Its over-fired heat source is great for cooking or finishing off menu items. The Imperial salamander broilers have intense searing heat produced by efficient infrared ceramic burners. The 36-inch wide broiler is rated at 35,000 BTUs per hour, and the 24-inch wide is 25,000 BTUs. We have a double inlet burner system, which allows you to use one half of the broiler when volume is low, and both sides in peak hours. The ceramic plates have a protective screen cover, which extends their service life. For added flexibility, we have 3 positions for cooking and finishing products. The broiler adjusts easily, even when fully loaded. For that professional look, we wrap our Salamander broilers in heavy-gauge stainless steel. This includes the top, front, and sides.
Moving on to our cooking range now. This is probably the most used piece of equipment in the kitchen. These are units with open heat sources. They can be multiple different kinds of sizes and shapes depending on the variations that may be needed for specific tasks. We also have deep fat fryers, so they can be gas or electric. The ones that we have in our kitchen, it's a gas-fired one. And this is used to be able to cook food in oil, in a deep, immersive amount of oil. Generally, the cooking temperatures are between 300 and 400 degrees Fahrenheit, although if we're blanching things like French fries, we'll do those down around about 270 so that we don't add color as we're cooking them. We also have flat top burners. This particular one that you see here is a French top burner, and as you can see, this right here, this is a cast iron plate on this one. We have a steel plate over on this one here. But you see the shapes that we have. We have an inner circle, an outer circle, and then 2 other plates that surround these. So the way that this works, it actually has a burner that's right in the center here that then radiates the heat all the way through this large cast iron top. This center part here is going to be the hottest, and then it radiates out slightly cooler around the outside. So this way, you can place pans closer to the center to boil, or if you want to just simmer or maintain heat, then you put them closer to the exterior of the actual countertop that's in here. Griddles are very popular in certain types of restaurants, especially breakfast food types of restaurants. They can be very useful. You go to a Waffle House, you'll actually see probably the majority of the foods that they cook there are done on these griddles. They're incredibly versatile, and they're very, very hard wearing, and they're very useful for cooking all sorts of different food products. They have they generally drain to collect the waste over on one side. They'll actually have an area where it drips through for ease of cleaning, and they generally just scrape down and then re-oiled when you're cleaning these. Induction burners. This is considered by some to be new technology. It's been around for a while, but in the United States it's really emerging now as something that can be useful for all sorts of different uses. It can be used to cook on. It can also be used to maintain buffets as well. The way these work, there is a magnetic attraction between the cooktop and the steel or cast iron pots that sit on top. So let's take a look at a video as to exactly how this unit works.
An induction burner consists of a ceramic plate with an electromagnetic coil beneath it. When you turn on the burner, an electric current runs through the coil and generates a fluctuating magnetic field, but no heat in and of itself. However, once you set an iron or stainless steel pan on the burner, the magnetic field induces many smaller electric currents in the pan's metal. Iron is a poor conductor of electricity, so as all these small currents run through the iron, much of the energy is converted to heat. Thus, on an induction cooktop, the heat is coming not from the burner but from the pan itself. This can make for more efficient cooking. A pot of water will come to a boil on an induction stove in almost half the time of a standard gas stove. You're also less likely to have hot spots in your pan where food gets scorched because it has more contact with the heat source below. The drawback is that only pans made from iron will work with induction stoves. Pans made solely of copper or aluminum conduct electricity too well to generate significant heat. Cast iron, stainless steel, and pans made with layers of stainless steel all work. As a rule of thumb, if a magnet will stick to it, you're good to go.
Wok burners are a gas-fired burner which actually cradle around the wok pan itself. So the wok, as you can see on the top here, has a rounded base to it, and that will sit right around the actual collar that we have here. This creates extremely intense heat that cooks food very, very fast. That's why this is used for stir frying. As you stir fry, you're constantly moving that food around. It's never sitting on that pan for a period of time. And so this is where we also talk about wok hei, which is the savory charred flavor that you get when you're cooking in a wok. Then we have our open burner style of range. This is where you have a grate style up on the top that you can actually see in this picture up here. It's a gas burner that gives direct heat by the open flame blasting right underneath the pan. The heat is very easily controlled, turning it up and down as desired. We have combi ovens in our kitchen as well. How does a combi oven work? So this actually gives the ability to have both convection and steam, as well as so you can have dry heat or you can have moist heat or a combination of both, thus the combi oven name. So this gives the ability to be very, very flexible and efficient with this unit. They heat up very, very quickly. They are extremely expensive, but that's because they're computer controlled to be very, very precise in their nature.
Okay, so we're in full cleaning mode now. So we're working on our combi oven over here. We've got the oven cleaner. We've preheated the oven up to about 200 degrees. And now we're actually going to start applying the product in there and running it through its cleaning cycle. Here we go. So we have a lot of burned on grease and dirt from over time. And so we're going to keep spraying this all throughout, just to make sure we cover all of it, all the shelves, all the racks. You can instantly see where that grease is starting to break down. We're going to give this about 5 minutes for it to sit and do its magic, and then we're going to send it through its cleaning cycle. So as we can see, there is some of the grease is starting to break down. So we need to program our combi oven here to be able to go through the cleaning cycle. So first, we hit the chef button, and we're going to click over one to our cleaning, and hit the chef button again. Cleaning, yes. Hit the chef button again. Now it's going to go through a 10-minute cycle, first of all, and that's 1 of 2. And then when it hits the second part, then we'll actually start seeing some action going on in the actual oven itself as it does a self-clean. Now with everything looking much cleaner, I can see through the window again. There is a little debris on the bottom. I switched off the oven at the breaker box, but if you take our sprayer now, we can actually spray down any residual little bits, and we can knock those out. With these seals going around the edges to make them live longer, we will also take some mild detergent, regular kind of detergent that you would use to clean dishes, and we'll go around those. We'll go around those more frequently though, just to keep them as clean and clear as possible of grease. They can actually make them start corroding and breaking down early. And then you've got a good clean oven square to work with.
Convection ovens are a great tool for a chef to be able to use. The fan circulates the air, the heated air around in the oven. So this actually makes for a shortened cooking time. It can actually be where you need to reduce the temperature of the recipe by 25 to 50 degrees compared with just regular conventional ovens that allow the hot air to rise and fall within the oven itself. So you have to be very careful to not overcook or burn anything in these. But because of that fan circulating, it means you don't get hot and cold areas of that oven. It's very close to being the same all the way through, so you have very even cooking on your food. So it makes for a very energy efficient use of an oven as well. Looking at our conventional or standard ovens that we quite often find in our kitchens, this is where the heat source is located on the floor of the oven. Our ones are gas. And that heat just gently rises up into the space in the oven itself. But this is where it doesn't have any kind of a convection fan in it, so it just relies on the heating, the rising, and then the falling of the heated air to maintain the temperature inside the oven. With these, you will generally have some hot and cold spots in them. It will generally be hotter on the top rungs than it will be on the lower rungs of the oven, where you have separate racks in there. And so if you're cooking a batch of cookies, then you may have to switch the top and the bottom ones part way through just to make sure that they are all evenly cooked through at the same time. And so you generally will find a range top burner up on the top of these as well. That's normally the setup of these. These are relatively inexpensive, and they're quite often they're very easy to integrate with other cooking equipment within the kitchen itself as well. Conveyor ovens, we've looked at these in our pizza unit, but these are very often used for doing things like pizza and subs and things like that. You can actually see the opening just right over here is perfectly sized for that type of thing. And this is a conveyor that runs all the way through this heated unit. So you place the pizza right here, and it will just slowly work its way through. Even though this is only a small oven in comparison to larger other ovens, where it just slowly passes through, you can time it to have exactly the amount of time and heat that it needs. These generally all have a heat source on the top and on the bottom of the unit itself. We've also looked at deck ovens when we study pizza as well, and so deck ovens have 2 to 4 shelves in them, and you can actually see these separate shelves right here, and they'd have a solid bottom on each of these as well. So you stack, they're all stacked on top of each other. That's why it's multiple decks, like the decks on a ship. And the food cooks on the shelves. So again, you can place pizzas directly onto the base of these, moving them around to make sure you get even cooking within these. Bakers tend to love these types of ovens. They're great for bread and dough products. Most chefs won't admit to using a microwave, but the fact is most kitchens around do have a microwave in them. The way that they work is that they have a magnetron built in right up near the top or over on the control unit above over here, and that directs out microwaves into the food. So the way that this heats up food is that it agitates the food molecules, the water molecules that are in that food, and they vibrate against each other, and that creates friction, and that actually creates the heat within the food itself. Now the problem is that it tends to unevenly heat or thaw foods, so it can overcook and overheat and maybe make certain proteins rubbery if you're not careful. So it's not a preferable thing to use, but in an emergency, it's something that a lot of chefs do use from time to time. A rotary oven, this is actually something that's used a lot by bakers, is actually where you will roll the rack in with all the food products on it, maybe some loaves of bread, as we can see in the picture right here, and the actual whole rack itself will move around in a circular motion. So the food cooks as the shelves actually move, and the products put on the speed racks themselves are actually what will cook as it starts to move around. So as it does this, it cooks things very evenly and very efficiently, and then you can literally just turn it off, open the door, and roll the racks right back out. All the food products all held right on there as well. Slow roasting oven is used for things like roasting meats at lower temperatures. So this is so that you can preserve the meat's moisture, reduce the shrinkage that can sometimes happen in high intensity ovens, and you can just brown the meat surfaces just to give them that nice golden brown color, but it gives all the flavor and moisture that you're looking for in foods, especially lower fat foods like chicken. A smoker is a great machine to inject specific flavors. So this is where you're actually going to be treating the food with smoke from different types of wood, maybe hickory or apple wood, anything like that we use to inject more flavors into our foods. So there are racks or hooks that actually hold the foods in place so that the smoke can evenly be distributed throughout the whole machine to make sure all the food gets that flavoring. You can either cool or hot smoke foods in these. Tandoor oven. So a tandoor oven is something that's very often used in Indian cooking, and I'm talking about the Indian subcontinent there, but this is a great cylindrical or barrel-shaped oven that's generally made of clay. You would have it wood or charcoal fired to create some very, very intense heat inside there. It has an open top, and basically what you're actually doing, you're actually going to place the dough against the inside of the oven between around 800 and 900 degrees Fahrenheit, so they cook incredibly quickly. Proofing cabinets are used to proof dough. What's to proof dough mean? So that's when we actually take our bread dough or maybe our donut dough, we place it onto our baking sheets and roll it straight into our bread proofer, and that will actually activate the yeast to want to start multiplying, and it actually produces carbon dioxide as it does that. That's what makes our bread doughs rise. But by keeping them in a moist and warm environment, it helps them to rise faster. So we can actually use one of these to actually keep bread hot after it's baked as well. So it has a humidity and temperature control component to it. On our one, it's actually down at the base. On this one, we can see it's up near the top. But these are great machines to be able to use to control exactly how we want our dough and then our bread to be as we use it. Always be careful with safety in our kitchen. We have lots of pieces of equipment that are very useful. They save us lots of time. They make us more efficient and more precise, but they can also be very dangerous. Always make sure you understand exactly how to use every piece of machinery you ever use. Make sure that employees are always trained and that they demonstrate proper use of that machine, not taking shortcuts and avoiding using the guards. Make sure that employees can disassemble that equipment properly as well, so it can be maintained and cleaned, and put it back together again, so that way they can prove that they understand exactly how the machine works. Make sure you always use those safety guards and the safety features built into these pieces of equipment too. Anytime you're cleaning them, make sure you turn off and unplug them when you're cleaning them, and then after you finish using them as well, so they're not accidentally turned on by bumping into the buttons. Make sure that when you're cleaning and sanitize, they're also unplugged as well, and then reassemble them correctly so that the next person who uses it doesn't get a bad surprise where something may fall apart or the guards may not work properly, making that machine dangerous. Make sure that you always report any problems or malfunctions with the equipment, so that it can be isolated, repaired, and put back into service efficiently and quickly, but kept out of service if it's dangerous. When we're using our deep fryer, we have to make sure that we use caution. We have some very, very hot oil that's in there when it's being used. And so you have to make sure that you're trained properly on how to use it as well. Make sure you observe all of those safety procedures as well, wearing any PPE that's required, and using the tools with handles while you're operating it as well. Make sure you have it filled to the correct grease level and cooking temperatures for whatever it is you're doing, whether you're blanching potatoes at 270 Fahrenheit, or if you're actually browning those potatoes off up at more like 350, or if you're doing some potato chips at 360. There are all sorts of different levels of temperatures that you need to be able to use to yield a different result. Make sure that you're very careful to avoid reaching over or climbing over fryers at all, because they are incredibly dangerous. There's a significant amount of oil in there that can cause a lot of damage to people. Make sure that you dispose of that oil, the used oil, properly as well. That can be very detrimental to our environment if we don't. Make sure you keep the floors clean and dry, and wear slip-resistant shoes anywhere near a deep fryer, because the tendency of being able to drip oil, and then if you mix that with water, you have a very slick surface to walk on. But do not work close to a hot fryer with a wet floor around it. Do not spill water or ice into the oil. It can be very dangerous and quite explosive. Do not store drinks near fryers. If liquids get into that hot oil, that can be explosive. Do not overfill it, otherwise it can bubble over the top, creating a horrendous mess and a definite danger to people as well. Do not pour excess ice from packages. Say if you have a package of French fries that have ice crystals around them, try and get rid of those before that goes into the basket and into the fryer itself. Make sure you do not overheat the oil. That's a safety feature, but it's also actually a health factor as well, with what we've learned about oils being heated excessively for long periods of time. Make sure you don't move a hot oil container. If you've just emptied out the oil from that fryer, let it cool down before you move it. Splashing boiling oil on yourself is never a fun thing. Do not store the oil on the ground by a grill area, because that can actually be a fire hazard there. Always make sure that if you have a grease fire, to be aware that you need to use either a Class B or a Class K fire extinguisher on an oil fire to snuff out any kind of fire like that. Let's look at how we maintain our fryer once we get to the stage where the oil is old and needs to be replaced.
Hey guys, Chef Fox here again. So now we're looking at our oil in our fryer. So this oil has done its best for as long as it possibly could. We fried up some French fries in there, some fried chicken, chicken wings, all sorts of things in here. But it's had its day. It's time to go. Now we need to empty out this fryer oil. We need to be able to effectively clean this fryer, so that way when we refill it with fresh oil, that it doesn't spoil that oil. We want to make sure we have good thorough cleaning in here. How do we do that? Lots of moving parts. Let's start working our way through it.
When you're working with the slicer that we already discussed, make sure you avoid any distractions. Wear cut-resistant gloves, secure food correctly, turn off and unplug the machine, and set that blade to 0 so no one can slice their own fingers on it. Keep that work area clean. Use tampers or pushers. Do not use your hands to feed any food ever into that slicer. Do not reach across the blade, and use the locking features that are on there. With a steamer, always use caution when opening that door. There's a lot of steam that can come blasting out of there. Always check it for any leaks. Check the safety valve on there as well. Check the steam pressure. And make sure that to clean up after any spilled food to maintain that machine properly as well. So a bain-marie, so this is a cylindrical shaped stainless steel pot. It actually sits in a steam table. So hot water, sits in a hot water bath to maintain different types of foods. Can be sauces, soups, various different things like that. They can come in different sizes as well, but do not be tempted to reheat food in these. They will scorch very, very easily. Carbonated beverage machines are used to be able to dispense different soft drinks. So this is where you have an ice machine right on top here that will supply ice into a beverage, and then inside here there are actually what we call a bag-in-the-box system, a bib system. And so that's what we have, where we have concentrates of different soda products that are then mixed with carbonated water and refrigerated at the same time to produce a very nice chilled soda straight out of the machine. Chafing dishes are another piece of equipment we can use to keep food hot. They're especially used on buffets. It helps to keep the food hot, and we generally use some kind of a canned fuel source. Normally we use what a company is called Sterno, is one of the most popular. It can be a liquid product or it can be a gel product. We place those underneath, as you can see right here, in these capsules, and that heats up a water bath, which is right under here, which keeps the food evenly heated. So coffee makers, which this one is a Bun coffee maker. Bun is probably the largest brand around that makes them. These can be plumbed directly into the water mains to where you open up this basket here, you pull this basket out, add in a coffee filter, and you add the ground coffee, the freshly ground coffee into there. It will actually make a specific volume of coffee where it's preset to do to produce. And then actually, if you see where this pitcher is here, and then the two on top, these are hot plates that will keep that coffee hot. Never try to keep coffee hot for too long though, otherwise it can actually lose some of its qualities and turn into a pretty bad cup of coffee. There's also, if it's connected to a water supply, a tap right here that you can use to make things like hot tea. Espresso machines are used to make a very strong flavored coffee. So, and we generally drink these espresso drinks in very small quantities, or they can be added to other drinks to add foamed milk to make various things like cafe lattes or cappuccinos. So how does an espresso machine work? It's a little different to most coffee machines. As you can see, we have the heating chamber right here that produces steam. This steam is then fed through, and it will actually go down into what we call our tamped coffee. That's our pressed coffee, which is right in here within the handle. The steam will then actually pass through under great pressure through that coffee, and that starts to extract a very thick type of a coffee, which is what our espresso is. That will then actually draw through and then dribble down into our cups over here. This produces a very strong and thick coffee product compared to regular drip coffee. It is actually, though, lower in caffeine than a drip coffee because it doesn't have enough time to dissolve the caffeine that's in the coffee beans, because it's actually a very quickly produced coffee drink. So food warmers or steam tables are very useful when we're using them on things like buffets. So you can see an empty one right here. So it actually has these holders right here where we can actually either pour water into these units, or sometimes it will be a dry element which is actually heating up. And you'll place the hotel pans, which is what we normally present a lot of our hot food in, and when these sit on top of either that steam bath or that element, sometimes with these heat lamps above, it will maintain that food at least 135 degrees Fahrenheit, right? Because that's the top of the temperature danger zone. So we want to maintain our food hot. Hot food's always hot, cold food's always cold. And so this is set up to be able to use full-size pans or multiples of smaller pans within there as well. One thing we never do with this equipment is try to use it to reheat foods or cook foods. It will not get hot enough, and it will actually maintain that food within the temperature danger zone for far too long. Pot holding cabinets are another piece of equipment that we can use to maintain the heat in food. So these are heavily insulated cabinets which hold hotel pans, again, or sheet pans if we're putting bread products and things like that in there as well. Thermostats will control the temperature to a very specific temperature, but we can also control the humidity level as well. They're very easily movable. They're generally on casters, on wheels, so we can move them from one location to another if we have an event in another location. Hot boxes can come in different sizes, and so we can actually, these are also insulated as well, and they can have sheet pans, baking sheet pans, just rolled straight into them. And again, they're on casters, so they can be moved from one location to another. An ice machine is a very useful piece of equipment in our kitchen as well. This is used to literally make ice cubes, flakes, chips, or crushed ice. Make sure you always use the proper ice scoop for it. Never be tempted to use anything glass or anything like that that can be detrimental to breaking in our ice and then causing us to have to create more ice and have to drain all of this ice out and clean it. Make sure you regularly sanitize this so that you don't end up with a situation like this where you have some what we call pink slime, some yeast and molds growing in there. Never a pleasant thing. Speed racks are very useful in our business. These are used for baking. So these are made of metal. They hold sheet pans, and lots of them. They're very easily movable because, again, they're on casters. They're used in kitchens, bake shops, dry storage, refrigerators, and freezers. And some ovens actually take these, or a modified version of these, directly into them. A tea maker, this is used to make iced tea, will actually brew very much like a coffee machine, the tea right up here, and then inject cold water in there as well to get the perfect type of flavor and dilution of your iced tea.
We already started. I kind of want your drink right now. It went in my mouth.
So hopefully you've learned a lot about all the different types of food service equipment that we use. Just beware, make sure that you always know how to use them safely and effectively so we don't have accidents, right? That's really important in our kitchen. Sometimes accidents can be messy, sometimes accidents can be dangerous. So make sure that you always take good care, make sure that you train in how to use these pieces of equipment before you use them. Make sure other people use them safely as well, and train them how to safely use them too. I hope this all made a lot of sense to you. If you've got any questions, please feel free to ask, and I will see you in the kitchen. Cheers!